All right, today we're going to take a look at the Earth's environment, starting with the ecosystem and some of the basics about the Earth. Then we're going to jump into water as a resource and water problems that come from water pollution. And finally, then we are going to take a look at air and air pollution. So when we take a look at an ecosystem, keep in mind that humans have altered their environment pretty much from their existence. Unlike regular animals who live in cohesion with nature, humans, we invariably tend to alter our environment and try to, again, make it more useful in the sense that we can gather more resources from it. Only recently have, though, humans been able to make changes on a global scale, particularly with the environment. So again, today, the impact that humans can do is far greater than what it was back when we were Homo sapiens sapiens, just literally coming out of the caves. Now, when we look at environmental stress, water and the earth is really one of the craziest ones. Water is a renewable resource. However, keep in mind, guys, it's not evenly distributed around the globe. Of course, in desert regions, water is a premium. Other areas have an abundance of water, but again, sometimes we can overuse water. And the basic concept that we normally end up seeing is what's called the hydrologic cycle. A lot of you guys have probably already covered this in basics of science. Of course, we get evaporation from the water source. It goes through the transpiration phase. It goes up and condenses. From condensation, we get precipitation. And again, it will actually return to the water supply. And so again, this cycle continues consistently. Now, one of the things noticed too in the picture, if you notice the mountain range, keep in mind, heavily condensed clouds can't get over mountains. So normally where we find mountain ranges, depending on which way the wind typically blows, normally we will find deserts or dry grasslands near mountain ranges. Okay, and that's because, again, the water can't get over one side of the mountain, particularly if the mountains are really large. All right. Now, one of the ways that water actually holds it in the earth are through aquifers. Aquifers are porous rocks under the earth that are capable of holding water. And again, you can actually get actual water layers. Now, keep in mind, the aquifer is like a balloon. Okay, picture a balloon filled with water, and if you squeeze down on it, the water doesn't come out. But if you notice in the picture, if the level or the surface level is actually above the aquifer level, what will happen is you can get an artesian well pictured in the middle. In other words, the pressure, if you take that balloon and stick a needle in it and pull the needle out, the pressure will actually shoot up. But in certain areas, if the balloon could stay somewhat rigid, you may have it where the well doesn't bubble up. So if you think of Florida, we have a lot of springs. Think of the pressure of the earth being pulled by gravity is forcing that water up out of the aquifer. Okay, if somewhere is below the aquifer or the water table, then we end up having just a regular well that we have to pull the water up from. All right. Now again, water problems can be really ginormous, and probably the most particularly one is the RLC, and this is again because of GMOs, again, genetically modified organisms, where the new farming seed that's been used for wheat in the region is not native, and again, it is not really drought resistant. And as a result of that, 75% of all the fresh water in the world is consumed for farming, not in cities. So it's not the people using it, it's farms using it. And the RLC is a particularly perfect example. If you notice on the left, this is a satellite photo from July of 1989, and the right is just under 20 years later. 75% of the RLC is gone. The fishing industry in the region was destroyed, and what's crazy, it's essentially turned into a desert region. Again, the use of water at this rate, particularly for GMOs, is alarming when you think about it. And again, keep in mind, guys, that when we look at fresh water, even though the earth is made of 70% water, only 2% or 3% of that water is actually fresh water. And the largest majority is actually contained in the polar ice caps, which is really kind of crazy when you think about it. There's not a lot of fresh water availability globally. Now, in some cases, we end up getting actual disputes over this. Israel, for example, which of course is in the Middle East and is largely a desert region, consumes the 3 times amount of the water in comparison to its surrounding neighbors. And again, this is because Israel is regarded as a semi-periphery core nation. Okay, it's really kind of on the bubble of both. But half of the water sources come from outside areas. The coastal region, you have the West Coast, the Gaza Strip. These are also Palestinian controlled regions of Israel. And one of the reasons that these guys are not allowed to break away is because of their access to water. So again, water is a major problem, particularly where it's limited as a resource. Okay. Again, as I was just saying, you have Golan Heights in the West Bank, which is pictured here. Again, have been petitioning, like I said, for independence. And again, they provide roughly 30% of the water supply for Israel. Now, another one that causes environmental stress is air pollution. And air pollution is generally from chloro CFCs, which I'm not going to say it is a pain in the butt to say, but these things actually cause all the major problems in dealing with the air and pollutants. Okay, so we end up having the creation of what becomes known as the greenhouse effect. In other words, what happens is it breaks down the heat as it's stored in the troposphere and ends up causing a depletion in the ozone layer. And what happens is it allows more radiation to come in and won't allow that radiation to exit. And these are called, like I said, CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons. Okay, and these are the things that actually cause global warming.